Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about the basics of democracy. Now, before we can talk about the basics of democracy, we have to talk about the foundations of democracy. What do you make of this assessment of democracy by British statesman James Bryce? No government demands so much from the citizen as democracy, and none gives so much back. What does democratic government demand from you, and what does it give in return? So take a minute to sort of ponder that question. What does democratic government demand from you? Well, democratic government demands that citizens are good citizens and they practice good citizenship. Now, what is good citizenship? Well, that's a question that we will answer in these videos. Okay, so foundations of democracy. There are some guiding principles of democracy. One is worth of the individual, equality of all persons, majority rule, minority rights, necessity of compromise, and insistence upon individual freedom. Now we will get into more of each of those points here in just a moment. But here's a picture of people practicing their rights as citizens in a democratic country. This is a group of people. This picture was taken at the inauguration of President Barack Obama. Over the centuries, any number of statesmen, philosophers, and others have told us that citizenship carries with it both duties and responsibilities. Theodore Roosevelt put that point this way in 1902. The first requisite of a good citizen in our republic is that he should be able and willing to pull his weight. So, according to Theodore Roosevelt, who was one of our presidents, to be a good citizen in a republic, you have to be willing to participate in the republic. So the first principle we're going to discuss is worth of the individual. And democracy is firmly based upon a belief in the fundamental importance of the individual. This concept of the dignity and worth of the individual is of overriding importance in democratic thought. At various times, of course, the welfare of one or a few individuals is subordinated to the interests of the many in a democracy. So what that means is there are going to be times that while each individual does have its own value, there are going to be times and situations where the welfare of one or a few individuals will have to sort of take a backseat to the importance of the many in a democracy. So, while it's not the worth of the individual isn't completely discarded, we have to worry more about what is good for the multitude, what is good for the many in a democracy. People can be forced to do certain things whether they want to or not. Examples range from paying taxes to registering for the draft to stopping at a stop sign. So, for example, like I said there, paying taxes. You don't want to pay taxes, but paying taxes is how the government gets money to pay for services that we all use on a daily basis. Equality of all persons is the next principle we're going to discuss. Democracy stresses the equality of all individuals. It holds with Jefferson that all men are created equal. This does not imply that all have the same abilities or the same wealth. It's not saying that each individual person has to be 100% equal in every single aspect. No. What it means is, rather, the democratic concept of equality means that every person is entitled to 1. Equality of opportunity, and 2. Equality before the law. So that means that no matter who you are in our country, you are going to be seen as equal before the law. So if I break the law, you break the law, or someone else breaks the law, it doesn't matter who it is, the same punishment is going to be the same. That is, the democratic concept of equality holds that no person shall be held back for any such arbitrary reasons as those based on race, color, religion, or gender. It states that each person should be treated as the equal of all other persons under the law. Next is majority rule and minority rights. In a democracy, the will of the people and not the dictate of the ruling few determines public policy. Majority rule. Democracy holds that a majority will be right more often than it will be wrong, and that the majority will also be right more often than any one person or small group will. Democracy can be described as an experiment or a trial and error process designed to find satisfactory ways to order human relations. So it's saying that, you know, democracy, the majority might be wrong every now and then, but most of the time, if the majority of the country wants something, that's going to be the correct way to go about it. A democracy cannot work without the principle of majority rule. Unchecked, however, a majority could destroy its opposition and in the process destroy democracy itself. Democracy requires majority rule restrained by minority rights. The majority must always be willing to listen to a minority's argument, to hear its objections, to bear its criticisms, and to welcome its suggestions. So, in a democracy, while the majority should have the say, the minority has to be listened to. The majority has to be willing to cooperate, to listen to the minority in order to hear all viewpoints. Necessity of compromise. In a democracy, public decision-making must be largely a matter of give and take among the various competing interests. Compromise is the process of blending and adjusting competing views and interests. Compromise is an essential part of the democratic concept for two major reasons. First, remember that a democracy puts the individual first and at the same time insists that each individual is the equal of all others. Second, few public questions have only two sides. So, we have to be willing to compromise in a democracy because we are always going to have competing viewpoints. There will never be a time whenever every single person agrees on a single topic. So that is why we have to be willing to compromise, to meet in the middle, because we need everybody's support to have a good democracy. But to get the support of the overwhelming majority, we have to be willing to compromise, to give and take, to be willing to give up a little bit to the opposition in order to have a final decision that everybody is happy with. And the next principle that we're going to discuss is insistence upon individual freedom. Democracy can thrive only in an atmosphere of individual freedom. However, democracy does not and cannot insist on complete freedom for the individual. Absolute freedom can exist only in a state of anarchy, the total absence of government. Anarchy can only lead inevitably and quickly to rule by the strong and ruthless. So, if we had absolute freedom for every single person in the country, that is anarchy, because that's no government. There's no order, there's no law, and that is going to lead to rule by the strong and ruthless, meaning that there's going to be gangs and thugs that run the streets, and they're going to essentially bring government, whether we would want it or not. So while there are people out there who think that, oh, total absence of government, that sounds amazing. No, anarchy, that is anarchy, and it just leads to rule by people who are willing to do pretty terrible things. Democracy does require that each individual must be as free to do as he or she pleases as far as the freedom of all will allow. So in a democracy, it says that the individual should be free to do as they please as long as the freedoms of other people are not being infringed. And that's going to be it for this video. Okay, if you have any questions about anything I discussed there, any of the principles of democracy, you can leave a comment below, or you can send me an email or a message on Schoology. Thanks guys, and I'll see you in the next video.